Okay, thank you. Let me first introduce myself. I'm a senior lecturer at Universidad Europea, where I train future translators on the fundamentals of translation technology. And my research there concentrates on post editing and how to implement that from a user perspective. My talk today concentrates on post editing practices with a view to filling gaps in the use of standards. Let me first start with this definition of post editing. There are many different definitions of post editing around from different authors, but the one I really like is the one from Tao C and GL, because it has a very professional perspective to it, and it really helps us give the context for this talk. So it is defined as the correction of machine-generated translation output to ensure it meets a level of quality negotiated in advance between client and vendors. There are different aspects here to this definition that I'm going to use along this presentation. Now, a little bit of context of for the different aspects that I'm going to cover today. What I bring here is the context for the materials today. A couple of years ago, I coordinated a research project, business-oriented research project at LinguaServe. So where we investigated how to implement post editing in a language service provider. There were three main objectives. First, to define the functionalities of a post editing tool, design a methodology for training post editors, and analyze the economic impact of implementing post editing processes. Together with these three main objectives, we also evaluated the use of the possible use of meta tags as defined by ITS as a way of helping, as the possibility of helping the post editor in her work. These are the main questions I want to deal with today. So in working with this project at Edita, we were looking at whether there were real benefits in using standards from the post editor perspective. We wanted to look at whether sentences were slightly less understandable or not when we included meta tags in daily practice. We also wanted to see whether the post editor might miss the visual continuity while performing her work. And lastly, we want to see whether post editors should be allowed to insert annotations. So these are the questions that I want to deal with today. Okay, so let's make a case for the post editing as a multilingual web enabler. I brought here some data from language services market. I want to thank Common Sense Advisory for letting me share with you these data. What's relevant here is that they estimate that the language services market is growing at an annual rate of 5.13%, and we need to take this in consideration. This goes to what we just shared with SDL presentation, that the language market is growing. Well, there's the concentrated market is North America and Europe, and there's also this list of factors that localization vendors really want to take into account. They mentioned five factors: turnaround time, quality assurance, warranty, the use of translation system, cost, and access to translation memory and glossaries. So if you link these 5 factors together with this quote that I have used here below, which refers to post editing, we see how the use of post editing increases the productivity in terms of the translated volume, and could even mean translating 150 to 200% in much more words for the same money. So what we have is bigger volumes, faster turnaround, we're cutting prices. So the idea is, okay, let's automate, right? But still, I would say, do we still need a person at the end of the process just to check that everything is fine, or are we just going to automate everything and just leave the engine do all the work. Well, my contention here is that at some point you're going to need a person checking empty output, right? We may call this post-production or post-editing, and therefore I visualize 4 possible scenarios where the human involvement is different at different levels. First, there will be no post-editing at all. We can leave the machine to do all the work. That will be for text and content just for use for internal use, for browsing, gesting. When we have tightly controlled languages such as the automation or the aeronautic industries, or with knowledge bases with customized MT. But apart from that, I think we need a person at the end of the process, either for rapid post-editing, where you're going to fix only you don't only fix serious errors, or partial post-editing where you're going to do minimum changes, or even full post-editing if you're going to go for external publication. All these different scenarios will need to be negotiated among translation vendor and client, because it will also affect the price and the turnaround times. Okay, so let's see in this context what will be the relationship between post-editing and ITS meta tags. So the idea will be what's in ITS for me from the point of view of post-editor. This is a very, very, very short summary of what ITS is. You allow me just to make a quick reference to this. Well, the idea is to add some value to content, right? So from the perspective of the post-editor, I want to see what is this added value for me. Do I really need to use this? In the context of the project editor, which I just mentioned at the beginning, we conducted a piece of research where meta tags were reviewed, evaluating them in terms of post-editing needs. There were 2 main questions that we wanted to address. First, which tags might be needed for post-editing purposes, and what added value can I get from these meta tags? So what we did is we first gathered a comprehensive list of all the information that the post-editor might ideally work with. I say ideally because post-editors normally don't have this access to this information. They're just given the assignment from the project manager or from the boss, and they just say, here's the text that you need to post-edit, and just do it as quickly as you can, right? But ideally, this was the long list of my wish list of the post-editing information. So I would like to have information about project specification, who is the client, is there any glossary available, what is the domain I'm working with, which is the MT engine that I've been using. That will form data set number 1, which is the gathering in project information. Then I would like to know a little bit about communication channel. It's just for internal documentation, it's external, it's B2B, B2C. So what's going to happen with this information when I handed it to my client? Then there's another set of factors that I would like to know as a post editor, which is UTS. This is taken from O'Brien 2012, which I will show you at the end in the reference list. And she talks about utility, time, and sentiment. So from the point of view of the post editor, I want to see what is the relative importance of the functionality of the translated text. Is it really important, or is it just some text that is going to be used for gesting purposes, for instance? What is their delivery time? Is really, do I need to take into consideration a quick time, or is just to have longer turnaround times? Or even on sentiment, what is the importance of brand image on the text I'm working with? Okay, these, as I said, these are ideal aspects that I would like to see as a post editor. Then, if we turn to content profile, I want to have information on user interface, and marketing material. It's a user documentation. It's a website. I'm working with online help. So the more information you give to me as a post editor, the better decisions I can take later. So, with all these data sets, now, as I say, project information and context information, what I will do is just create a set of rules and guidelines to do my work as a post editor so that I can just go ahead in a smooth way. So this is a possible list of text-related guidelines. You see that I'm going to look at how to fix a decision whether to fix or not wrong terminology, to spend time in terminology research. Do I need to fix for morphological errors, misspelling, punctuation, or even stylistic problems, right? This is something that you seldom do when you're post editing because, well, as I say, when you have faster turnaround times, you're not allowed to check on stylistic errors. But again, if my client wants a higher quality text for external publication, I might as well do some stylistic fixing. Okay, so I have these text-related guidelines. Then I take my language-dependent set of rules. This is just an example of a list of rules from the combination English-Spanish. Just take it as an example because for different projects you will need to devise your own list of language-dependent rules, not only in terms of languages but also in terms of the MT engine that you're using. Errors will be different and the list of things that you need to take into account will be different. So if we take my text-related guidelines together with the language-dependent rules, the next step will be to map those into ITS categories to see if there is anything that I can work with in this list of categories. So this is just an example, a short exercise that we did at the project editor. It's just taking the list of data categories that you can see in the first column. We have translate, localization, no, language information, empty confidence. So we want to see how we could use it for post editing purposes, and from then how we could use them for rule activation in terms of post editing. So let's take, for instance, the data category translate. This defines whether something has to be translated or not. So from a post editor's perspective, what I want to say is some way of automatically blocking this text that is not going to be translated at all, right? So as a post editor, when I see the text that is blocked, let's say that you are using colors or whatever other identification system you might use, I know that I'm not going to touch that text, that's just going to leave it as it is. Other interesting things that I can take to account, for instance, localization note. When you're looking at utility, delivery time, and sentiment, well, that might trigger different post editing rules depending on the agreement that you have with your client. So again, I would like to see from a post editor's point of view how to activate those automatically. And this is a continuation of the list. For instance, if we look at empty confidence, for a post editor, what is valuable here is that, let's say that above certain threshold, the system doesn't be allowed to touch anything and the text just goes as it is, right? So I don't need to think in terms of empty confidence because this is automatically given to me for post editing. Right, so if we look a little bit about how to maximize post editor's interface, there are two key ideas here. First, keep it simple and custom, and give the post editor the possibility of customize whatever feature she needs. And please keep it simple. Keep it clean and uncluttered. Don't place too many tags and too many calls in the text I'm working with, because otherwise I might run into cognitive friction, as Morkins and O'Brien say in their work. Okay, so by way of the conclusion, just four main aspects that we need to take into account. Yes, there is a case for post editing as a multilingual web enabler. At some point, you're going to need a person doing that work. So what we can do is use ITS meta tags to facilitate that part of the work. And as I say, keep it clean and simple so that I can do my work as quickly and as high standard as needed. This is the list of reference, and thank you for your time.